Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, today we are doing something really exciting. We're embarking on a massive 10,000-year documentary-style journey through economic history. And honestly, it's going to fundamentally change how you view that cash sitting in your wallet right now. Because from ancient empires all the way to those digital screens in our pockets, money has always been this ultimate quiet machine that decides who holds power over whom. We're going to break the whole thing down, the origins, the catastrophic crashes, and the digital revolution that is literally happening right this second. It's an absolutely incredible story, so let's just get right to it.
To start us off, I want you to think back to your old middle school textbooks. Do you remember the story they told us about where money came from? It usually goes a little something like this. Long ago, before money existed, people just traded. You had chickens, your neighbor had bread, and you swapped. Simple, right? Then one day, that barter system got just a bit too clumsy, so someone brilliant invented money to make shopping easier. Well, here is the shocking truth. Anthropologists have searched for a century, and they have never found a single society that actually worked this way. Not one. The barter economy that supposedly gave birth to money? It's a complete myth.
So the textbook myth tells one story, but the actual archaeological reality tells a completely different one. Money was never invented to make trading easier. It was invented to keep score. If we put on our economic historian hats for a second, we can look back at ancient Mesopotamia, like 5,000 years ago. Way before the first coin was ever minted, temples were already using debt ledgers recorded in silver. The very first money wasn't some physical object you handed over. It was a tracking system for who owed what to whom.
Okay, let's dive into this cycle. Because once you see what money really is, you start to notice this crazy pattern that spans 10 millennia. Literally every form of money humans have ever invented has followed these exact 4 steps. First, it gets created. Second, people come to trust it. Third, political power captures it. And fourth, that power quietly drains its value until the whole thing collapses. Shells, coins, paper, gold, and yes, the money you work for every single day, they all follow this exact same documentary arc.
Section 1. The true origins of money. Not an object, but a memory. So, before there were coins, or paper, or even shells used as currency, how did money actually function in daily life?
Let's use an everyday analogy to break this down. Picture a village, say 10,000 years ago. You help your neighbor fix his roof. He doesn't pay you right then and there. He just owes you. That favor basically sits there as a memory until one day he hands you some grain and the debt is settled. That is the real first money. It was just a trust contract. Money, at its very core, is simply a memory of debt. But, as those little villages grew into big cities, that web of memory got way too big to hold in anyone's head. So people needed a physical stand-in, an object that everyone agreed was scarce and valuable.
Section 2. How empires debased our trust, fusing money and power. Humans tried everything from cattle to giant stone discs, but the real major shift happened around 600 BC in a kingdom called Lydia, which is in modern-day Turkey. The kings there took lumps of gold and silver, fixed their purity, and stamped them with a royal seal. Now that stamp was a promise from the king. But it also did something incredibly dangerous. For the very first time, money carried a ruler's face. Money and political power were completely fused together.
What's really fascinating here is how 2 completely separate, massive empires fell into the exact same trap. Rome used silver coins. China used the world's first official paper money. But both of them discovered the ultimate magic trick for funding an empire. Roman emperors would melt down pure silver, mix in cheap copper, and re-stamp it as the same coin, magically creating more money for themselves to spend. Over in China, emperors realized they could just endlessly print paper. The debasement methods were a bit different, but the result? Absolutely identical. Massive inflation and catastrophic economic collapse. When Marco Polo saw Kublai Khan forcing his entire empire to use paper money backed by nothing but his own command, Polo essentially called it magic. He said, "The Khan has mastered the secret of alchemy, turning plain paper into the wealth of a kingdom." Paper has the exact same flaw as a Roman coin, but honestly, it's so much worse, because a coin at least requires some physical effort to melt down. Paper takes 0 effort to print. Powers simply cannot resist the temptation to manipulate money when it controls it.
Section 3. The death of gold and the modern fiat system. Fast forward through the centuries. To stop kings from quietly draining the wealth of the public, the world eventually tried to anchor money to something governments couldn't just fake: physical gold. But as we're going to see, that anchor was really only attached when it was convenient for the powers that be. Building up to our modern day, let's look at 1944. At Bretton Woods, the world essentially tied every currency to the US dollar, and the US dollar was tied to physical gold. Makes sense, right? But wars are expensive. By the late 60s, the US was printing way more dollars than it actually had gold in the vaults. So in 1971, President Nixon goes on TV and permanently severs the dollars tied to gold. And that decision directly leads to the massive structural cracks we saw in 2008, which in turn sparked the launch of Bitcoin in 2009.
That 1971 moment is absolutely crucial because it ushered in the era of pure fiat. Fiat is literally Latin for let it be done. And I want to be really clear here, especially if you don't follow finance on a daily basis. The paper money sitting in your wallet right now, it is not a claim on gold. It is not a claim on anything physical. It has value strictly because everyone around you agrees to keep pretending that it does. It is a shared illusion of trust. And because it's not chained to a physical rock anymore, a government can create a limitless supply with just a single keystroke.
And the result of that? Well, the US dollar has lost more than 80% of its purchasing power since it was cut loose from gold in 1971. The number printed on the bill stays exactly the same, but it buys you less and less every single year. So, the crucial point to take away here is that what we now politely call monetary policy is really just the modern, highly sophisticated version of a Roman emperor mixing cheap copper into your silver.
Section 4. 2008. The breaking point of trust. For decades, this fiat system held together pretty well. But in 2008, the global financial system nearly stopped spinning entirely. This was the moment the general public finally saw behind the curtain of modern money.
When those giant banks faltered after making terrible, incredibly risky bets, central banks basically conjured trillions of dollars out of thin air on computer screens to bail them out. The institutions that actually caused the crisis, they were rescued. Meanwhile, ordinary everyday people lost their homes, lost their jobs, and watched their savings get silently eroded by this massive influx of new money. People came out of 2008 asking a very logical question. Why do we blindly trust these centralized institutions with our hard-earned money at all?
Section 5. Bitcoin versus central banks. Right in the shadow of those 2008 bailouts, someone else was asking that exact same question. An anonymous inventor named Satoshi Nakamoto released Bitcoin. It was explicitly designed as a direct, decentralized response to this broken institutional trust. It was a return to the ancient idea of money as a transparent public ledger. But this time, it answered to no king and no central bank.
We are literally standing at a massive fork in the road for our digital future. Over on the left, we have decentralized finance systems like Bitcoin. It has no owner, and it has a hard, unchangeable limit of 21 million coins. Power simply cannot inflate it. But on the right, governments are looking at digital money and deciding, well, they want to be the ones controlling it. Enter CBDCs, which are highly centralized, state-issued, and totally programmable.
So what exactly is a CBDC? It stands for Central Bank Digital Currency. Objectively speaking, it is your national currency, but in a purely digital form issued and monitored directly by the central bank. Now, I know, on the surface, this sounds incredibly convenient. It's just a digital wallet on your phone, right? But here is the major catch. Physical cash is entirely private. A purely digital currency issued by the state removes that anonymity completely. It hands the issuing institution unprecedented visibility into your entire life. Let's really ground this abstract concept in daily life, because the reality of programmable money directly impacts your personal financial freedom. With a CBDC, every single transaction can be tracked to the cent. But more than that, it's programmable. Imagine if the digital dollars in your wallet were set to expire just to force you to stimulate the economy, rushing you to buy groceries before your funds just disappear. Or imagine if certain purchases the issuer deemed inappropriate were simply blocked at the checkout register. It is an incredible shift in societal power.
Section 6. The fight for financial freedom. The shift from paper to purely digital money isn't just some convenient tech upgrade. We are predicting a fundamental change in our entire societal structure. This is a battle for financial freedom and the future of how human value is actually stored and exchanged.
And this brings us to the core takeaway of this entire explainer. For 10,000 years, money has never once been just money. Whoever controls the ledger controls the power. Every emperor, king, and central banker throughout history has understood this. The only people who generally miss it are the everyday citizens holding the cash. Because, let's face it, the trick works best when the public isn't paying attention.
But right now, you are paying attention. As we transition into a fully digital era, the next form of money is being decided right now, today. So the ultimate question you really have to ask yourself about our future is this. When this new system is fully built, who will hold the controls? And will it be you? Keep learning, keep questioning, and hey, thank you so much for joining me on this explainer.